Welcome to Breaking News with Ben Hunt, Jack Forehand, and Matt Ziegler. Before we start, let me remind you what the show is not. Breaking News is not a show about fact-checking. Breaking News is not a show about saying whose bias is the one and only correct bias. And Breaking News is definitely not a show about calling out fake news. Breaking News is a show where we look at today's top stories and have a conversation around our favorite critical question, why am I reading this now? Drawing on the headlines we're tracking at fiatnews.com, join us as we talk about what's collectively making us tick, with clear eyes, full hearts, and this obligatory disclaimer. Nothing in this podcast is advising you to buy or sell any security or to do anything with your money. Seriously, you should only act on investment advice from someone you know and someone who knows your unique situation. We are not that person.
Welcome to Breaking News on the Epsilon Theory YouTube channel. I'm Matt Ziegler, joined as always by Ben Hunt. Say hello, Ben.
Hello, Ben.
Jack Forehand. Say hello, Jack.
Hello, Jack.
You're playing by the rules. This is really
Yeah,
important.
Playing by the rules. Playing by the rules.
Once I learn, I stick with it.
We finally got the joke. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
You're all the way in now. You're all the way in. So, packed show. We got lots of fun stuff. We've got a Zeitgeist. We're talking Rick Rieder and the corporate case for cutting interest rates in the summertime. All sorts of interesting stuff going on there. A tweet of the week. It's the return of Roaring Kitty. We're all so excited. Jack's got a dumb question on Biden's slightly questionable housing proposal. I've got a cultish corner following up on our last episode's discussion about Conan's appearance on Hot Ones. But first, big picture this week. We're talking about Israel. We're talking about how you signal what team you're on, why you signal it as a nation in narrative world. And Ben, this is certainly not the first host of nations we're seeing do this. There's quite a long list actually behind it, but Norway, Ireland, and Spain just said they recognize the Palestinian state, and that is weird. Why is that such a peculiar thing for those three countries?
Well, I got to tell you, man, it's like each country can do what they want to do in terms of, and they've all got their domestic political reasons and full-hearted reasons for doing whatever they do. But Ireland, Norway, and Spain, these were the three European countries that came out today and said, we're going to recognize Palestinian state. I'm convinced now that we live in some sort of like simulation, or the writers with the capital W are just funning us at this point, right? Because Ireland, Norway, and Spain were the three countries in Europe that recognized Hitler's Germany as the good government and were neutral / pro-Germany in World War II. I mean, you can't make this up. You literally cannot make it up that the three countries in all of Europe that would come out and say, hey, we're going to recognize Palestine as a state are Ireland, Spain, and Norway. Anyway, I'm convinced we live in a simulation, Matt. That's the only logical answer.
So the scriptwriters are doing something with the craziest callback ever to us.
The craziest callback ever. Exactly.
Craziest callback ever. Why now? Why is this move to signal this? Like, what purpose is this serving that they want to make these announcements at this level?
Well, I actually do think that it is actually a similar domestic dynamic as in, 1938, 1939, when the rest of the world declared war on, or at least the rest of Europe, declared war, hostilities with Germany. Certainly Ireland has a domestic history, as does Spain, as does Norway. I'm less familiar with Norway's, domestic politics. But it's not an anti-Europe sentiment, but it's an European leadership piece, right? So that for Ireland's going to be wherever the UK is on it, I'm going to stake out a different ground. For Spain, okay, wherever, France is, I'm going to stake out a different ground. Norway, it's a little tougher to decipher there, but anyway, I think it's actually a pretty similar dynamic, that these decisions are predominantly based on what drives in domestic politics. So I think that there are domestic political reasons why it is in the perceived self-interest of the ruling coalition. And I wrote a freaking book on the coalition politics in European countries, but that's what drives this stuff. That's what drives this stuff.
Are there any practical implications of this internationally? Like, does this matter at all?
No. How about that for a quick answer? We can move on.
That's good. That's your shortest answer in breaking news history.
Ever. Yeah. No consequence.
So these foreign announcements are really all about domestic policy. It's really just about signaling to the other people, your constituents, your people you're trying to get on your side. It's a signal to them, not so much a signal to the world.
But it's the same thing in the United States, right? I mean, and it's you've got the U.S. administration, the White House, the Biden White House. They are between the rock and the hard place on domestic politics on these issues. So they are trying to thread this, not just one needle. They're only trying to thread like 10 needles all at the same time. They're lined up a little bit askew to each other. And God bless them if they can pull it off. But even today is like, well, of course we support the two-state process, but it can't be unilaterally supported. It has to be the result of, negotiation and conversation, which neither side actually wants to have. So the basic position is, yes, we support it in this ethereal sense, but not so much as we actually want to say anything about it. It's so much of threading those domestic needles works. You basically just don't want to say anything at all about it. And that's not unique to this White House. It's not unique to any election or electoral campaign. Basically, you don't want that as an issue because it only hurts you. And that's where we are right now. It only hurts the Democrats in this campaign.
I know we've talked about this before, and they probably don't even care, but is the narrative war turning more and more against Israel? It just seems like on a regular basis, stuff like this is happening where people are maybe, the support of Israel is kind of going in the other direction.
Well, I don't know. But what I do know is Israel doesn't care. We had maybe 2 sessions on this earlier on. This is what total war means, which Israel's made the decision. This is total war. This is existential. And so we are going to prosecute this war to an end. And the end is the destruction of Hamas, not the neutering, not the, you have to, a government. No, it's like, we're going to kill all of them, of Hamas. And in the immortal words, well, like I say, these are not the immortal words of William Tecumseh Sherman. His immortal words were not "war is heck." His immortal words were, as he laid waste to broad swaths of the American South and the civilians there, "war is hell." War is hell. So it's, I think, and I think strongly that one of the impacts of the video game wars that the United States has waged for the past, 50 years, where it's not, where we wage war through drones, we wage war through proxies, and to the degree that it's our own American soldiers in Afghanistan and Iraq who come home without limbs or their lives, it's all put under a very big rug. It does not become any part of our national consciousness. And this is where we are, where war is remote, war is not total, war is the absence of total. War is something that's another item on the news. and does not affect our economy, does not affect our politics. It's just put in a corner over there. And what we're seeing, and one of the reasons my spidey sense is so tingling today, is that the war, a total war, an existential war, is now in process in the Middle East. Iran attacked Israel directly. I know we've already all forgotten that in a month, and certainly the market has totally put it in a little box over here and, clicked the lock and tucked away the key in our breast pocket, as this did not happen, but it happened. And let's just say it's not the craziest thing in the world to imagine that the Iranian president was just killed over the weekend by Israel. That is not a crazy idea. That is not a crazy idea. What we're engaged in, we talked about this in breaking news, is a phony war. Meaning not that the war is phony or false, it's that it's not being waged to the extent it could be. But that doesn't mean that's not peace. That doesn't mean the war is not happening or the war doesn't exist. This is war. And it's an existential war. It's total war for Israel. Is it maybe a total war for Iran? I could see it getting that way. This is one of the big reasons, like I say, that my spidey sense is tingling like crazy right now. Just like crazy.
I mean, I would think that's what we definitely don't want to see. I mean, it becoming a total war for Iran and a total war for Israel, I mean, I think the implications of that would be ugly.
Well, it's ugly now. I mean, you can't look at what Israel is doing in its waging of its war against Hamas and say it's not. It's horrible. It's hell. It's awful. It's bad. It's wrong. And this is what war is. And we don't know it. We don't talk about it. We don't think about it in the United States at all. We haven't experienced war as hell since World War II. Even Vietnam was not war as hell. And that was a lot more hell. It was a lot more part of our national fabric than anything we've experienced since Vietnam. So, we pulled U.S. troops out. The last one was just like, 73. I think it's 73. I think it's right. So it's been 50 years. 50. 5-0. And that despite Iraq and despite Afghanistan, those wars were waged without making any national sacrifice. All the trillions of dollars we spent, all the U.S. soldiers who came home without arms or lives, it's as if it never happened. It's as if it never happened. And that's our attitude towards war. War is now heck. And what Israel is doing is fighting a war as hell. And that doesn't just stop because there's a lull. It stops when there's a defeat. And nothing about our modern world, nothing is prepared for that, or the conflict that would end in the defeat of either Israel or Iran. Again, spidey sense tingling like crazy on this. Crazy.
Well, let's jump into the Zeitgeist, where your spidey sense I know is tingling too, because Rick Rieder, our dear old friend at BlackRock, he thinks we should cut rates this summer.
Well, let's step back a second. Let's talk about, for our audience, right? BlackRock is the largest asset manager in the world. I mean, we can look it up quick, but how many trillions does BlackRock, I'll say, invest, manage? We're talking trillions with a T.
It's a big number.
It's a big
bigger
number.
than many countries, many economies.
Yeah, you get dwarfs so many countries and economies. Rick Rieder is the guy who runs their fixed income portfolio, which is, I'm very confident in saying, the largest privately owned fixed income portfolio in the world. And, there may be, I don't know, China, I may say privately owned, right? So countries, China, I'm sure owns more fixed income instruments, U.S. Treasuries, than BlackRock owns. It may not be a lot more, but it's going to be more. So, but the largest privately owned portfolio of fixed income assets is managed by BlackRock, and Rick Rieder is the guy who heads that. So, to your point, Matt, he comes on and says, "Hey, you know what we need? We need to beat inflation. I think we need a rate cut. We need a rate cut." And he comes out and says this, which, so that everybody understands, when interest rates go down, the price or the value of a fixed income instrument goes up. So what Rick Rieder is saying is, we need the number to go up for my massive holdings of fixed income assets. And I want to do this not because I want to be richer, but because I'm going to make the argument, this is how you stop inflation. This is how you stop inflation. That, oh my goodness, we're making so much money with the interest rates being so high that, gosh, you need to cut that because we're just, the rich have got it so good now that the way to cut inflation is to make them a little more uncomfortable by cutting interest rates, which is madness any way you think about it. I mean, the people who benefit from cutting interest rates are the people on Wall Street who own financial assets. Oh my God. And everyone on Bloomberg and CNBC is like, oh yeah, this is a serious policy idea. And what world are we living in? It's got to be some sort of simulation. It really does, where these just nonsense statements, totally self-serving, are made. Everybody goes, okay, that must be serious. That sure sounds smart. So yeah, my spidey sense is so tingling on this stuff because we've got the phony war in the Middle East. We've got whatever the hell is going on in China. Why am I reading this now? ASML and, TSMC are saying, yes, we can disable our, advanced chip making facilities if China invades Taiwan. Why am I reading about this? And I know the answer, because you just had the election, you're in Taiwan, you've got people saying, anyway, this stuff is happening. And at the same time, in the United States and in Europe, everyone in Wall Street and Washington is in the bag for number go up. Just like, they see it. Trust me, they see it. It's like, I got one more good shot at a score. I got another shot at a score, because come November and whatever happens there, between China, between the Middle East, between whatever happens with this election we're going to have, everybody's saying, all right, I can't see past that. So I need to get mine, Jack, right now.
And that, it seems like this is one of those things where, whether you're talking about China, one of the largest markets in the world that's gone a little bit haywire for outside investors like the BlackRocks and other people who've tried to do business with these places, with all the private assets and the other things with their inflated valuations getting pushed down further in the pike into evergreen funds and other things at record levels. Like there's so many problems. It feels like, get me out now. Give me one last good number. Like I need to make a good thing happen before all the really, really big, scary uncertainties are around the corner.
Yeah.
And it feels like nobody's hiding this. It's just
it's 2007 all over again, Matt. It's 2007 all over again. It's, Chuck Prince at Citigroup saying, hey, when the music's playing, I got to get up there and dance. He's talking about, mortgage-backed securities, residential mortgage-backed securities. And I just look at what's going on right now in terms of pricing, in terms of interest spreads. I mean, we don't have to get in all the details for this audience, but I just feel in my bones, this is '07 all over again, with its complacency, where it's just bubble activity all over the place. Have you looked at copper? Have you looked at the price of copper? It just like this. Now, copper is exploding because it's going to be used in data centers. Fine. That's great. You know what? The global price of copper, if that story, if that narrative is what's going to drive the global price of copper, when you've got China saying, we can't get anybody to build to buy a home, so we're going to eliminate all down payments. And no more down payments. You don't have to do a down payment anymore if you want to buy a home, get a mortgage. Hey. Anyway, I get agitated, as you can tell. But for my adult life, at least, the marginal buyer of everything in commodity world is China, because China has engaged in massive infrastructure build projects as their way of moving their economy forward. And China is, what they are telling you right now is, we can't do that anymore. We can't be the marginal buyer of everything anymore. And yet, the price of copper is going parabolic. The other day, nickel went parabolic because, something happened in, what's the French territory where they, where, 3% of the world's nickel production is there. That was the story for what. Do me a favor, go back to '08 and look what happened to the price of oil. Just everyone listen to this call, just right. Well, I'll tell you, it goes up to 120 before it goes down to whatever, 40 when, '08 really hits. This kind of weird, unpredictable, parabolic moves in things like copper. This is what you see. And before you have a big crack up event. And I don't know how to say it more directly than that, but this is why my spidey sense is just jangly off the charts.
And do you worry about an '08 type event? I mean, when you reference '07, I mean, '08 was the worst thing most of us have seen in our lives from an economic perspective. I mean, do you worry something like that could be sitting out there?
Oh, 100%. 100%. And I think I know where it is. I think I know. Well, I mean, where is it? I mean, there are the two, I'll call it proximate issues, which is total war in the Middle East. A China which is flailing at the same time that the United States is heightening the vice around advanced technology exports. Which is, exactly what the U.S. did with Japan with its, oil and coal and steel embargo or iron embargo of Japan. And then the I got mine, Jack attitude of Wall Street. Right? It's a return of that excess together with enormous geopolitical stressors that we haven't seen in 80 years. Now, last thing I'll say about, on the financial world, the epicenter for this that I see is insurance world. So the feeling I get is that we've got the same sort of opacity and over-engineered optimization in insurance world today that we had in mortgages starting in '05 and then going through the real collapse in '08. It's not that I think that your life insurance provider can't, won't make it. It's that we've created this system of insurers and reinsurers and interlocking ownership structures such that it's not really arm's length transactions anymore, but it's one affiliate selling a portfolio of insurance policies to another in a reinsurance transaction that is then financed by private banking. It's incredibly optimized against a backdrop of a world where society tries to insure everything. And when that's no longer possible, you get what's happening in property and casualty, P&C, today in Florida or California, where the policies just can't be written. But they have to be written. So they have to get written by the government, by the state. There are also many aspects of this that rhyme for me with '08 and the social policies we had around individual home ownership and the optimized, highly levered financialization of the mortgage market we saw starting in '05 through '08. I get a sense we're seeing the same thing in the insurance world today. So that's my focus right now for how this all happens again.
So let's zoom. I guess we're zooming in.
Fun.
This is not zooming out.
Fun
I want to
stuff.
zoom in. I want to go to the tweet of the week. I want to talk about, I don't know if this is bread and circuses. I don't know what this is at this point. But Roaring Kitty came back in a tweet without any words. Jack, can we just show the image
Yes.
and why
We'll put it up on the screen.
nobody's really talking about what's going on in the inner workings of the insurance financing space? The thing that steals the headlines is GameStop again. What is this?
It's a rug pull, Matt. It's a rug pull. Right? It's get the rubes in the front door, get them buying this up, sell it, and it's a rug pull. And you see it all the time in crypto. It's just famous for that. Right? And what I'm saying is that this is the sort of behavior you see in markets when, before the deluge, right? This is the sort of behavior that always happens at these kind of fin de siècle, end of an age periods. And for each one of these issues, whether it's cocoa or copper or nickel or GameStop or whatever one of these things goes parabolic and then comes crashing down in classic rug pull fashion, there will be a reason. There will be a rationale that will be told to you. And I'm saying that ain't it. It's not that that's wrong. It's not that the reason that's presented to you for the, going straight up and then coming crashing down, it's not that the reason was a lie. It's that the collection of all of these parabolic moves and collapses, all from different reasons, is part and parcel of the rug pulling behavior that you see at the end of a big credit cycle. That's my point.
Is it fair to say on this, because from a market's angle, this is the kind of behavior where it's not like, and I'll pick on copper just for a second, because it's one of those things. If there's a demand for copper and there's a supply for copper, the capital gets allocated theoretically in the CFA textbook or something, and the money goes to the mines, and then the mines make the stuff, and you have this whole natural back and forth. When I see these parabolic swings where there's no actual constraint except for a headline, it feels like manipulation. Is there another word for it?
Speculation is the other word for it. right?
That's a kinder word for it.
Well, I mean, it is. I mean, that's the technical word, right? So in any commodity market, you've got two players. You've got what are called naturals, who are the producers, the consumers of this commodity. And this is why futures markets exist, right? If I'm a farmer, I would like not to have my crops be subject to the vagaries of whatever things going on. I'd like a little predictability, please and thank you. And if I don't know, the bread maker and I need to buy the wheat, I'd like to have a little predictability too. So that can be, a oil driller and an airline company, for example. These are all natural participants that for their business, they wouldn't mind paying a little premium. They get a little more predictability in their supply or demand of the thing, right? So this is how options and futures markets, this is how they began. With naturally, there's a real reason for it. And to make it work, you need market makers. People are going to take one side or the other who are going to be to make a market function, right? Because you may not have a buyer and a seller at the same time right away. So you get a trading company that comes, all right, well, I'll own it for a little while because I think I can, make a little fraction by selling it to, this person over here. And, oh, I think I see where the weather is going to go. So I'm going to try to get ahead. So you get market makers. Ultimately, you get speculators that come in. This is all good. This is all fine. Right? This is the reason that these markets work well, is that you have both naturals, you have market makers, and you have speculators. All good. All good. We're living in an age where, with vast pools of capital, you can, in fact, particularly if you can marry it with a good narrative like, oh, data centers, you can try to make a killing. And making a killing is to make a killing, it has to take a rug pull, right? It's not that you can just, a stock, you just go up forever and it just keeps going up. No, and then you got to sell. You got to buy low and you got to sell high. Both parts have to exist, the buying and the selling. So you can replace the temporal order there. You can sell it and then buy it. That's called shorting something. You can do that for sure. You can sell high and then buy low. That works. But you got to have both ends of that. And for both of ends of that to happen, you got to have a big move and you got to be active on both sides. This was happening, man. This was happening.
Is there something to be said about the size of these payoffs? Specifically like GameStop, like less money gets made on GameStop, presumably on this move, even if you timed it all right, than like the last time. Is it a later cycle thing that the payoffs become more obscure, become smaller? Like the rug pulls is dramatic, but did the size of the payoff change? Is there anything in that?
I think that the people who were trying to do the rug pull on GameStop initially were surprised that it worked as well as it did. And I think so. The basic idea of I'll use a different metaphor for kind of the rug pull approach. What you're doing is, I'm going to use a snowball analogy, right? Where you're trying to roll different snowballs down a hill. You're not really sure which of them is going to kind of pick up snow, but you figure one of them will. And we'll start 10 snowballs rolling down a hill. I want one of them, if any one of them turns into an avalanche, that's great, because before I start the snowballs rolling down the hill, I have very inexpensively set up a good outcome for me if an avalanche happens. I think what happened in the first GameStop episode was that people were starting these little snowballs. It was like, oh man, it becomes an avalanche, and then the avalanche became a mega avalanche. It was like, yes. And once you get the mega avalanche, you think, well, maybe I'll catch that lightning in a bottle again. Sorry, this is my third metaphor here, but you get my point, right? So I think that what happened was, oh, maybe we'll do another mega avalanche. I think they got enough of an avalanche, got a little rug full, and all right, we're on to the next. We're on to the next. That's what happens in these periods of time. It's the same way with inflation. You say, oh, inflation, it's not so bad. It was just used cars. And then used cars are no longer in. So you say, used cars are, but then it's always something else. It's always something else in these periods. It's always something else where inflation hits. Always somewhere else where the rug pull episode happens.
Do you have any thoughts on like what was going on behind the scenes here with GameStop? I mean, you have people saying, Roaring Kitty is back. He's in cahoots with hedge funds, or maybe he sold his account to somebody, or I don't even know what was going on behind the scenes, but or his account was stolen. Like, because if you look behind the scenes, it wasn't just this tweet. I mean, there were a ton of tweets that kept, going through this whole thing.
Jack, it's a rug pull. This is how they work. You get a group gets together and say, hey, we're going to try these different snowballs. Right. And we can get, whatever Kitty's, account and do something. Let's do something kind of crafty or stupid. There's no real rhyme or reason to it, Jack, except that I'm going to start a dozen snowballs. And, this is a good one. We got the whatever Kitty's, account, Twitter account. It's just a snowball. No rug pull is identical, but they are all the same. You try to roll some snowballs down the hill, and you're already set up for one of them turning into an avalanche.
This is the key here that I think is so interesting. Is it's the setup of, it's like the punchline. You just have to need to see what the setup's going to be.
Yeah,
you already know what's going to happen, or approximately, but you're just kind of throwing stuff at the wall, going like, if anything can just move this in this direction, I'm good if it just goes in that direction.
Exactly, Matt. I mean, it's like, there are 5 movie scripts in all of Hollywood. It's the same thing with rug pulls. I mean, it's just a rug pull, and it's just a con, and you've got different flavors and variations, and everyone's a little different, but they're all the same. They're all at their heart the same.
I get to ask my dumb question early here, but so the idea is this has to be somebody in the Wall Street professional money management game in cahoots here to make this happen.
Yeah, yes. And we say Wall Street as this anthropomorphification of, or this embodiment of hundreds of thousands of individuals and organizations. We'd say it's Wall Street, and yet Wall Street is so big. It's like saying, I don't know, sports or, government. It's just so, actually, I mean, it's bigger than government, but it's bigger than government. And here's the other thing, Jack. It doesn't take a lot of money to do this. It does not take a lot of money to do this, to start the snowballs down the hill. That's the crazy thing about all this stuff, is it doesn't take a lot of capital to do it. Anyway, this is the way the world is, my friends. I mean, it doesn't require a lot of money. It doesn't require a vast conspiracy of people. It doesn't have to be all planned out. It's just as simple as Matt was saying, we're going to throw a dozen things at the wall. If any one of them hits, they're so inexpensive to do, and the payoffs are so great if one of them hits, that let's go. Let's freaking go. It should be illegal. And what burns me so much is the fact that Matt, your firm, right? Or my firm, a registered investment advisor who puts on their materials, shows an S&P 500 chart and doesn't put in the footnotes, the S&P 500 is not an investable index. who doesn't footnote the hell out of that chart, your next SEC, audit, they're going to say, well, you got to pay, a $50,000 fine because, you could have misled your customers thinking that the S&P 500 was actually an investable index. I mean, it's madness that is what absolutely happens every day. And yet this Hello Kitty not nonsense, this Hello Kitty rug pulling shit just it's like it never happened. Anyway, getting agitated again.
Well, the best way to beat the registered professional is to be an unregistered unprofessional. And I look forward to using that roaring kitty meme in many a presentation going forward and getting it through compliance.
Yeah.
I've already tried. Jack, you got a dumb question, which, speaking of things where you throw money at a problem, this one I think perplexed all of us, but go ahead and ask this question. I'm actually fascinated by this.
Well, I feel like I've asked more than my share of dumb questions, so I actually don't have one directly. This time I'm going to ask for a friend. And I'm going to keep my friend anonymous because I don't want to embarrass anyone here. So we're just going to refer to my friend as Joe. So Joe's dealing with a problem, Ben, and that housing has become very expensive. The younger generation is having a really hard time buying a house.
Yeah.
Joe has access to some of the best economists in the world. He has access to some advisors who are very intelligent on this issue. And he's decided the best way to handle this problem of housing being unaffordable for the younger generation is to give them a bunch of money to purchase housing. And I'm wondering what your view is on that.
Yes. So this would be Joe who lives at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Yeah, Joe?
It might be. I'm not going to give away my sources, but it might be.
Yeah.
Well, there's an expressway going into Scranton, Pennsylvania with this guy Joe's name on it. I don't think it's him though, because that's in Scranton, Pennsylvania. Can't be him.
Yeah.
Must be him.
Yeah, it couldn't be.
Okay.
So, a couple points. One, so the it's not a policy, right? It's just this is part of his wish list. All right, this is not ever going. I don't think it can happen, but it's the idea that first-time homeowners, or I don't get this part, or people who want to trade up for a little more space, a little bigger house, we're going to get a tax break. And it's something like, I forget what the total is. Maybe you know this better than that, but it's not a lot of money, but it's like 10 grand or something like that over a period of years. And the answer, Jack, is that this has nothing to do with actually making it easier to buy a house. Because if this were to become policy, tax policy, then what you would see is that not Toll Brothers, but D.R. Horton, some of the others who kind of are more focused on lower end homes, miraculously, their price will go up by exactly the same amount that the tax break is. Yeah, my best example of that was in 2008. Congress, with great fanfare, passed a bill to increase the grants that students could take out, the Pell Grant money. Right, so it went up to like $4,000 a year, and this is a big thing. Made a big deal out of it. So our Pell Grants are going up by $4,000 a year to give some in these challenging times. We've got to help out the students. Not the next quarter, not the next month, not the next week, the next day. Apollo, the other for-profit colleges raised their tuition by exactly the amount of the increased Pell Grant. I like to say this phrase, I'm not making this up. The next day, they raised tuition to precisely match how much growth. And then every other college also followed suit. It just took them a couple of weeks. It took a month for, your local state college to raise its tuition by exactly the same amount Pell Grants were raised. The for-profit guys were just, DGAF. So this is what happens, right? If you give people more money to buy something, it's not going to increase the supply or lower the cost of that something. It will directly increase the cost by exactly the amount of the new money you're giving people. So,
and to your point, that goes basically to home builders.
Well, of course,
and also people who own existing homes already, right?
Of course, but this is to the point. It's not about, we're actually going to make it easier to buy a home. It's about giving people money before an election. And whether it actually works for them or not is not the point. It's just, let's give them some money before an election. I'm getting agitated. Gosh, you guys have gotten me so agitated on this.
And I asked this question when we talked about inflation before, and I think the answer is going to be the same. But Joe Biden probably does not think this actually is going to make homes more affordable, right? This is more something, again, giving people money before an election.
No,
he understands probably this is not going to work for the purpose he's trying to get it to work for.
So I think the premise that anyone is thinking about how to actually make homes more affordable is a false premise. It's not that he's not thinking about it. It's that thought process is not part of this at all. Right? So none of this started as in, hey, I want to make homes more affordable. The whole thing started with, hey, I want to get reelected. And that drives, well, how can we get reelected? Well, what can we do to support people who might vote for us? And by support, we mean give money to. So it's not that this was a policy that was derived to answer a pressing policy question. It was a policy that emerged purely from asking the question, how can I get reelected? You see what I mean, Jack? I mean, it's not, you're starting from the premise of, I want to solve a problem. But the problem to be solved was never about home affordability. The problem to be solved is reelection.
Yeah, my question was flawed when I talked about consulting with economists and stuff. I'm sure no economists were even consulted about this because it has nothing to do with making houses more affordable.
No, it has nothing to do with it. It just, you need to be able to paint it with a policy reason, but it's like, I don't know, building a model airplane. The coat of paint you put on is the last thing you do. That's what this is. It's just a coat of paint to try to build something that answers the question, how do I get reelected?
And this is kind of a tangent, which I don't want to get off too much on that. But if they did really want to deal with the housing crisis, I assume trying to attack the supply side would be the way to do it, correct?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. I mean, I don't yet. There's another short answer for it. Yes. I mean, look. So the other way to do it is to make the price go down by making the economy do worse, right? And so that
and that's not a great answer.
Well, that's no answer for getting reelected. That's for sure.
So Matt, we're going to have our first Cultish Corner part 2 because there was so much good stuff in the last one that I think we only got about halfway through, and you had a lot more to say. So we're going to talk about Hot Ones again and Conan O'Brien's great appearance on it.
And to be fair, we started this. I was only just uncovering that I was about to write this piece, and then I wrote this piece, and we finally got it out. So Ben, Thanks for getting the piece up on Epsilon theory the other day.
It's a great
There's been
piece.
so many fun conversations around this since we got it out. So I want to talk to you guys about this specifically, which is A, go read the piece. It's on Epsilon theory. But B, kind of as I step back after writing this and I talk to a bunch of people about Conan's appearance on the YouTube show Hot Ones is a reminder that A, life is full of scripts, B, life is full of characters, and C, life is full of choices on how we play our part. I think that's a big thing of what we're noticing here. Ben, you said earlier, life is full of scripts. What'd you say? There's 5 basic movie scripts. This is a very basic idea that we see all over the place.
Yep.
When we're talking about any of these stories, we're talking about political candidates, or we're talking about Roaring Kitty, or we're talking about any of these things, these are known scripts. Like what we saw Conan do was say, here is the guest host relationship. Here is I'm going to be super prideful and super braggadocious about this thing that I am clearly not comfortable with, to great comedic effect, but I'm going to milk all these scripts for entertainment value. That's why we're at, geez, I don't even know, or we're multiple millions of views at this point. It's putting up crazy numbers on how many people watch this, because he knows the scripts. Life is full of characters. Understanding that in each of these cases that we were talking about through here today, it's like Ireland knows there's other characters at play when they make this Palestinian state announcement. On the show, Jack, I think you're already on record. Dr. Arroyo, your favorite sub-character?
Yeah, Dr. Arroyo was the incompetent doctor is like the perfect person to be in that.
Amazing. So good.
The character, thinking of like the Sauces as characters, the role that they play in this whole thing. Thinking about the questions as like parts of how we get to know the characters on our way through the script. I know, Ben, you in particular, you enjoyed some of just the not only the questions that Sean said, but the way that Conan served up the answers to these things. Did you any particular favorite questions or answers that come to mind for you?
Well, when he was talking about the common knowledge game, he gave a very serious response to the notion of what makes basically a good host and what makes a good guest. Because that was kind of the question. Well, you're being, how does a guest work? And he was like, look, the guest has got to play the guest script also. And part of that script is, as Conan said, this is the best entertainment ever. You can't go out there and say as the guest, oh man, I'm really bombing it. Because then the crowd looks around and says, oh, well, you're not playing the role. And that makes everyone very uncomfortable. It makes for a bad guest.
It makes for a bad guest. Knowing the script, knowing your part, knowing your role, and then how that contributes. And seeing Sean Evans and Conan so meta-aware, or whatever you want to call it, of exactly the way each of those roles and those scripts manifest with each other. I so love, and this is in the piece too, but Conan doing however many late night episodes that he did, and he said the bad guest would turn to the audience and say, like, I guess this isn't going very well. And he's like, You could see 200 souls leave 200 bodies.
Love it.
You as the host are just hung out to dry because this is supposed to be show business. And then ultimately manifesting in life is full of choices on how to play that part. Nothing worse than an unaware guest who's going to not play their part on the friggin' late night show where they're to do their thing. That was the whole point of Conan's story. Nothing better than somebody who's there to completely commit to the bit. Jack, did you have any particular Dr. Arroyo lines that were of favorite?
Not off the top of my head. It was just, it was really smart, the whole thing with Dr. Arroyo, like having come in and check the temperature and being like, I run a little bit cool at the beginning. I thought that was really cool. Like there must have been at least some pre-planning in that, because it was like executed perfectly.
What do you think about that, Ben? Like the addition of him as a character, and even the choices in his responses.
Well, the ability, and it is such an ability as an actor to play it so straight. Where did you go to law school? Where'd you go to medical school? Out of state. It was just so deadpan, and like that was an answer, and And it was so unexpected because I expected kind of more of a punchline and a punchline delivery out of state. And it takes you a second to realize, no, that doesn't compute. And that's very funny. Anyway, it's great stuff.
Playing with the expectations on all these different levels, playing with the the languaging of the answers, which I think that's probably my favorite bit about the whole Dr. Arroyo character. And in that follow-up episode, which hopefully you guys got to watch, and if not, I firmly encourage it. Conan does a follow-up visit from Dr. Arroyo in the Team Coco studios, where it just gets even better, including did you guys see this? Did you witness the glory that is the follow-up visit?
I have not yet.
So he's talking to him about like where he went to school or something like this, and he's like, I went to the Mayo Clinic. And he's like, oh, you mean the Mayo Clinic? He's like, what, do you put that on a sandwich? Like, what? You're playing with these things is so good. It's just so good. So please, 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 if you haven't, go back and read this piece, watch the episode of Conan on Hot Ones, because this reminder that there's scripts all around. This is what breaking news is all about. Life is full of characters. You should look at every single detail in a script and in a story and think about, as a character, as a role, what is it contributing to the broader story and how it's being guided? And then thinking about how to play the choices. And this is kind of the lesson of the essay as I was working this out in my head that took me so long, is you can either hijack one of these scripts to enrage other people, or you can choose, as Conan did, to basically co-opt the story and engage the people around you. Kind of feels like there is a shortage of people honestly willing to co-opt for engagement these days. Yeah. Ben, are you feeling this? Like, do you feel like, and maybe it's absent at major levels more and more, but why is that so resonant?
Yeah, I think, Matt, it is because I think a lot of people have a spidey sense tingling like I do. And so I think one of the initial reactions is not to put yourself out there, to really engage with a story, especially for comedic or other kind of effect. You kind of want to pull back. So I'm seeing a lot of people pulling back. And I think that's part of this general gestalt that we're all feeling right now, or a lot of us are feeling right now.
Yeah, and it's hard to step up, especially in the face of
Bad shit.
Enraged people. It feels scary. And maybe that's part of the other reason why true comedy, true silliness, true just like, hey, we don't have to make this a mess.
It's hard to be brave in a situation like this, man. It's hard to be brave.
Yeah, it
more
is.
than anything, comedy takes bravery. A little bit of craziness, but it takes a lot of bravery.
A different flavor of bravery than we need like on a front line, but it's a different type of front line. It's a different type of bravery. And it's one that perhaps is more relatable than the video game of certain other things. I got some notes for us.
Go for it.
We started talking about Ireland, Norway, and Spain, the craziest callbacks of the three countries in Europe possibly ever. It's still just weird to see those three names in a headline with this. A reminder I wrote to myself here is that foreign policy is always about domestic constituents, not foreign people. It's about your local people, not about your foreign people. You got to read these things like this. Ben, you made the point. War is actually hell. I wrote down too, hell is just this video game that we log into to play these days. Hell is very real. Hell is not a phony war. It's not just talking about this. It's not a game. Yikes. BlackRock, the publicly traded but private asset manager, meaning it's not a government thing for somebody who gets held up in the YouTube comments over that. We're addressing this here. Cutting rates to fight inflation. This spidey sense that's tingling here is this is a number go up play. This is, you got to get yours now, because if there's all this stuff in front of us that's big and scary and dark and evil, you start to say the names that work your own book. And if something's to benefit you, you better get out there and you better do it. And we're living in a period of markets and politics and everything else where that incentive is really strong. And we have to look at people taking those risks on the front pages as this is what they're doing. The roaring rug pull. I hope that's what we can remember. The spidey sense going off again. The clever scheme of this whole thing. And This is still the game, that this is this late cycle stuff when not only are we rolling the snowballs down the cliff face to see if it'll trigger an avalanche because we bought really cheap insurance on the ski shack at the bottom, but we've actually taken the bottled lightning that we've already like sold 3 times over. We're now packing the snow around the bottled lightning bottle and we're rolling that down just for good fun. These are late cycle behaviors. Don't take them as anything else. Jack, we talked about your good friend Joe. I wrote down on this. Ben, you said it's not a policy. And what it reminds me of is it reminds me of a wish book. Do you remember the Sears wish book?
100%. 100%. That's exactly what it is.
This is what this is. Yeah. This isn't Christmas. This isn't Christmas. This is parents need to buy presents for kids so everybody's happy. We're going to label it a wish book, but this is just pure capitalism and not always in a bad way either. Like people being happy is a good thing. But when it's served up this way...
I'm old enough to remember the Neiman Marcus Christmas catalog, which we get every year, right? We never ordered anything from it because we couldn't afford anything from Neiman freaking Marcus. We got their catalog every year.
Neiman or Marcus. Maybe if they broke that up into 2 separate family entities. And the Pell Grant example, I think, is fantastic. I remember that too. It's crazy. It's about the election. That's what this is about. It's not about solving the housing situation. This is about an election. It's Neiman Marcus Sears wish book for the ages. And then we ended at the end just talking about this whole idea. If policy is creating for constituents, if it's creating things for other people, just trying to remember, this is what Conan's showing us. People create good for other people. We get on the front line. There's no magic carpets. If you think there's magic carpets, that's a great way to make a rug pull. That probably is a better joke that I should have actually thought through in advance. There's a good line in there somewhere.
There's a good line.
But it's this idea. There is a good line in somewhere coming out of my mouth here. This idea that on the local level, the one-to-one relationship, Conan to Sean Evans, us choosing with each other, getting together, and instead of being combative, instead of trying to hijack to take a story to enrage others to say, I know what the script is. It's how to post a meme online and then profit on it, to roll a snowball down a hill, to declare, oh, this is the side that we're on, so I can get more votes at home, but everybody on a foreign basis can be damned because that doesn't matter to me. The answer here is comedy in the loosest sense of we got to make friends. We got to co-op stories. We have to engage with each other. Yeah, there's a lot of dark stuff in this episode, but the upside is this is all a begging reminder to say, go out, cooperate, engage, maybe have a laugh. Guys, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Matt. Right on.
Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to like and subscribe wherever you're watching breaking news so more people can find our show. If you know another clear-eyed and full-hearted individual, why not share this episode with them too? Like we said at the top, the media is making us tick, and it's our job to talk. Follow the headlines at fiatnews.com. Follow Ben at epsilontheory.com and at Epsilon Theory on Twitter. Follow Jack at validiacapital.com and at Practical Quant on Twitter. Follow Matt at sunpointinvestments.com, cultishcreative.com, and at Cultish Creative on Twitter.